Welcome to another Big Red Country Husker Q&A session. We're going to answer questions from the email bag and go over our thoughts and who we thought made a big jump after the spring camp that maybe has a better than normal chance of starting this year. And then we're going to go over some recruiting news, including a five-star receiver that's down here in my neck of the woods, right down here in Texas. So let's get into this.
Jalen Lloyd, 66 yards. He was wide open.
After the turn, he's got a man.
Harburg going deep. Caught.
First question I received was, can Dylan Raiola win the Heisman? And that's a question I wasn't too sure if they met this year or can he just win it? And it's probably two different answers. Yes, there's no doubt he could win the Heisman. Not too sure if he could win it in 2024, but let me tell you this. If Nebraska made the playoff, if Nebraska ran and won 9-10 games and got into the playoffs, and Dylan Raiola shined throughout this year and is making the plays that we've seen him make, he looks as good as he did even in the spring game. It's not impossible. Definitely no doubt if they ran the table and won it all, I would think he'd win it. But for a true freshman to win the Heisman, man, no one else has probably got to stick out. I don't believe anyone's ever won the Heisman as a freshman. I don't know if Herschel Walker won it as a freshman or a sophomore, but I do remember when Herschel won it. He might have been a freshman. Johnny Manziel. Yeah, forgot about that. Manziel is the first freshman to win the Heisman Trophy, capturing the award in his redshirt year on the strength of a remarkable performance on the ground and in the air. He joined John David Crow as one of two Aggies that ever won the Heisman. So no one has ever won the Heisman as a true freshman. Johnny Manziel was a redshirt freshman, still a freshman, but no one's ever won it as a true freshman, which Dylan Raiola would be a true freshman. So, and Herschel Walker was something else in college. I've seen some good ones. Bo Jackson was another one. Mike Rozier was another one. So there's been some good running backs that's won the Heisman Trophy. Here lately it seems like it's been quarterbacks, but at one time, you know, the run game's kind of not the same as what it used to be back in the good old days. So, but that's kind of my answer. I do think he can win the Heisman Trophy before his career's up. Will he win the Heisman Trophy? Really depends how well the rest of the team does. It's kind of hard to know what they decide and how they go about. And I know it's a vote on how they won. And I always thought it should be voted on after the bowl games. And the reason why, I go back to Tommy Frazier. Tommy Frazier was playing now. He'd have won the Heisman Trophy. Back then, they just didn't respect a mobile or an option quarterback. Now, almost every quarterback playing is some kind of option quarterback. But back then, there wasn't. And they ended up giving it to Eddie George there at Ohio State. And then we saw Tommy Frazier just tear Florida up for about 200 yards on the ground. And that was during that Fiesta Bowl and that 62-24 thrashing for the national championship. I think even Corso even said it should be after. That was an example of why it should be afterwards. And to me, Tommy Frazier deserved the Heisman Trophy. Like I said, it's possible if he won this year. Nebraska goes on a run. Dylan Raiola plays well. Huskers make the playoffs. Then yeah, I could see it. But is that likely? Probably not. I do think Dylan Raiola is going to do well. And I'm going to talk more about the quarterbacks later. There's another question on the quarterbacks, and I'll explain why. But yes, just to answer the question, can he win it? Yes, he can. The next one was, will Nebraska have a 1,000-yard rusher or a 1,000-yard receiver or both in 2024? That's a good question. I don't know if they will have either one. And I say that not because they don't have any good ones. I say that because Rule likes rotating players. You've seen that mainly, like you've seen it mainly on the defense, but he's going to use, I think, all the wide receivers, all the running backs. I do think if we do get a 1,000-yarder, it probably would be wide receiver, maybe Banks, Nair could be one. And man, don't even underestimate Bonner, Engineer Bonner, or even Lloyd. You know, Lloyd with the big guys up there and the speed. You know, he might get it on fewer receptions, but might have quite a few 45, 65, 70-yard touchdown catches. So if we did have one, I would say receiver. Not saying we couldn't have a 1,000-yard runner, 1,000-yard rusher. If I had to guess, if we get the injuries we had last year, then yes, I believe we will. If Evan Johnson ends up taking a majority of these snaps because of injury or whatever the reason, then I could see it. But if Gabe Irving and Ramir Johnson are available, and then you have Dell, and then you have Emmett Johnson, I think we're going to see a rotation with these running backs, keeping everybody fresh, keeping fresh legs. And because of that, you're probably going to get somebody with 700, 800. You might even get 900 yards. I just don't know if we're going to get 1,000. I don't know if one player is going to get enough carries to get that. But in the receiving core, I think they're wanting to air it a little more. The running game is going to be more of setting up the pass, and then hopefully kind of breaking down the fourth quarter and securing that win. In other words, kind of wearing down the defense and, you know, going ahead and finishing off a win. I think that's where you're going to see most of it. And I know that's kind of Rule's philosophy, and that's kind of what he wanted to do even last year. And things kind of fell apart with the injuries. You got to remember, at one time, I think we had maybe 2 players from the starting 11 on offense playing. And then you think we lost 2 running backs, 4 wide receivers. And then on top of that, Jeff Sims not working out as well. And nothing against Haarberg. It was just he was kind of thrown into that position. He didn't practice as the starter. I think it's more this year. You're seeing it more as everybody's going to be the starter. Everybody's getting practice like the starter. I think Rule learned nothing's a given, and he's going to make sure everybody is ready to be the starter. And that's what he's even said over and over again in his press conferences. And so I think if Haarberg would have had the offseason and the practice like he did this year, and I think the coaching and quarterback coach making a big impact especially on Haarberg, but I think on all of them. And this would have been last year, I think it would have been a lot better. Now, who would be calling me? But seriously, if Thomas would have been here last year, when it had a quarterback coach, and Haarberg got the snaps and the reps that he did, don't get me wrong, he still got reps last year, but I guarantee you nothing like he's getting this year. I guarantee you Rule made a stink about no one's never going to be ready. So I kind of give Haarberg a break from last year, and don't underestimate what he could do if he got in the game. And I think you're going to see him in a game in some aspect. If it's going to be quarterback, we'll find out. The next question I have is, will Husker fans be okay with 9 wins? And I want to talk about this because we're watching now, you would love to have 9 wins. Probably can't remember the last time. Bo Pelini, I think, was the last time we really consistently had some 9 wins. But you got to think, at one time, even with Tom Osborne never won fewer than 9 games. Every year he had at least 9 wins. And that was back when they only played 11 ball games, maybe 12 with a bowl game. So at the most you paid about 11 or 12. And then as the years went on through the 80s and the 90s, it jumped up to the 12 or 13. And then now you could see a team play 14 or 15 games by the time it's all over. And how it's not hard to go 9-6 or 9-5. Tom Osborne never lost more than 3 games in a year, and that was rare. Most of the time it was 1 or 2 losses a year, and a lot of times it was Oklahoma that they lost to. But there's been some seasons where they did have 3, but he never lost more than 3 in any of his years, and he only did that a few times, not very many. And no one was happy. The fans weren't happy. They were asking for Tom's head and asking him, basically wanting him gone in about 5 or 6 years into his tenure in the 70s. And to a point, he almost left. He almost left for Colorado. And lucky for us, he didn't. And the reason he didn't, he had a little, well, this shows what kind of man he is. He just said he couldn't, there's no way he could go there and coach, come and play Nebraska and coach against kids that he recruited and promised them and their parents. So he decided not to leave, and luckily he didn't. And he was learning on his own too. Remember, that was his first head coaching job. And it just took a while. And he one thing about him, he learned from everybody else. And you see Rhule doing the same thing. He grabs things. He even says he'll steal things from other teams all the time. You hear him doing that even in practice, the things he does. So, but I think now the fans would accept 9 wins. Will they consistently accept 9 wins? I think it's different now than it is back then. Back then, you lost 1 or 2 games, you were out of it. Not a bowl game, but you were out of the national championship. We always wanted to be there for a national championship. We wanted to play for a national championship. But now with the playoff, with the 12-team playoff, 9 wins could get you in. Mainly 9 wins in the Big Ten could get you into the playoffs. Definitely 10 wins. So I think, yes, the fans would accept a consistent 9-win seasons, especially if it gets you in the playoffs. So expectations just a little different than it was from back then, but yeah, I think they would. Which goes into my next question that was asked, and they wanted me to know what I thought on Joe Klatt's rankings, where he's got Nebraska ranked 22nd, and talks about, how good that he feels like they'll do and how close they were even last year. And in a way, it kind of surprises me. And I do agree. I think Nebraska is a lot better team. I think they were a better team last year. And I even said it. I know people's made fun of my predictions because I predicted about 9 wins last year. But if they watch it through the end, at the end where I say, going by if they play like they should play and they eliminate the penalties and the turnovers, I could see them winning 9 or 10 games. Well, you saw that last year. We lost games because of turnovers. The penalties wasn't as bad, but the turnovers were even worse than they've been. And what'd we lose? 4 or 5 games for last second field goal or by a touchdown or less? And how many turnovers we have in them games? I think even Klatt talked about that. During them 5 losses where we lost by 3 points or less, we had 17 turnovers. And 14 or 15 of them were by the quarterback. So Dylan Raiola doesn't even have to be great. He just needs to be consistently decent. Not turn the ball over, throw it away like you saw him in the spring game, scrambled. If it's not there, he just threw it away. Didn't question it, just said, okay, let's go to the next down. Still drove down the field and scored on that drive. So I think he gets it. He knows the key is just survive. Don't take a sack. Don't take yourself out of field goal range. But I am kind of surprised. I was surprised just because Nebraska hasn't had a winning season in 8 years. They ain't even broke 500 in 8 years. And to now say they'll be ranked, because to be ranked, they're probably going to have to win, I'd say 9 games. When you guys say that to be even ranked 22nd, you're probably going to have to be, I'd say 9-3, wouldn't you think? 8-4 might do it. I guess it depends what 8 wins and what 4 losses you had. Was one of them wins that bowl game at the end to a decent team, then yeah, you could probably be still ranked in the top 25 then. But I'd say it's probably going to take at least about 9 wins. And right now, if I had to look at it, there is 9 wins. There's probably 10 wins. I could see a win in every game besides Ohio State. USC, it's still up in the air. It is in California this year, so that's going to be a tough one. So right now, if I had to look at it, I only see 1 for sure that's probably a loss. 2 if you really want to count USC. But we've seen it year in, year out, not just with Nebraska, with anybody. Wins are just not given. Just because you're favored doesn't mean anything. The Big Ten's so close. It's going to go either way. They might pull out wins you wouldn't expect. it wouldn't surprise me to see, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them go in and beat USC or even beat Ohio State team. But both of them are on the road. It's very unlikely. But then go around and turn around and lose to Wisconsin or Iowa. That's just the way it is. The Big Ten is so tight, mostly tight. I could see it happening. But yeah, I was a little surprised with ranked, but then I wasn't. So I guess in a way I think they might be ranked too. It's just hard to say, to give that ranking right now, knowing that we haven't seen, let's get to 500 first. Let's get to that 6th win first. They go 6-0, 7-0 right off the bat, then no doubt about it. No doubt about it. They're going to have a great year. But you wait, because when they get to that 6th win, everybody's going to, or that 5th win, excuse me, when they get to that 5th win, that 6th win is going to be hard. Just because you haven't done it, you've seen it over and over again. You saw it last year when we were 5-3, had 4 games to make the 6th, couldn't do it. Just something about it where just getting over that hump, that 6th win is going to be harder to get than win 7, 8, or 9. Once you get over and got 6, you're going to see a sigh of relief from everyone. Everyone's going to be more relaxed, and you might even see them play a lot better. So I hope they do have their 6th win before they get to Ohio State, because they already got 6 wins or 7 wins. They're really feeling good. That means the quarterback, whoever's playing, is doing well. Turnovers have been cleaned up. Man, with this defense, I think they could be in any game, and that's including Ohio State. Not saying they're going to beat them, but with this defense, I think any game's possible. Now, finally, the final question I have, and someone wanted me to explain what I meant by this is Harburg's job to lose, and saying, what do you mean Harburg's going to win the quarterback job over Dylan Raiola? I didn't say that. I said this is Harburg's job to lose, because right now, sincerely, it's really, Heinrich Haarberg's job. Even Rule has said he's not just going to throw a freshman in there to a classman that's already been a starter, and he's still the starter. So Raiola's going to have to go earn it. But trust me, Dylan Raiola is going to earn it. Now, right now, Haarberg is improving too, and if it gets down to the end and they are seriously tight, close, right there with each other, and the turnover margins, even in practice, are the same, I see Haarberg getting the starting job, but I don't see him keeping it through the year. And I see Dylan making progress to the point he will end up being the starter and stay the starter until he leaves Nebraska. The question is, will it be before the beginning of the year? Will it be before the beginning of the season? Probably so. He's right there. He's not your typical freshman. He's a lot more mature. He's had the training. He's played at some of the top schools, high schools in the country. And I mean the top ranked schools in the country. He's had a lot of coaching. He's coached with a lot of coaches from the NFL. He's went to a lot of camps. So he's way ahead of most freshmen, probably even most sophomores and juniors. You could see it even in the spring game, how calm and cool he is. Now, he knew he wasn't going to be hit, but last year at Buford, their offensive line wasn't as good, and he was on the run constantly. And I understand there's a big difference in a high school line coming after you and a college line. But he kind of got his feet wet of how to get out of it, how to make throws on the run, and to make plays when he doesn't have much time. So that's going to help him also. And I feel like our offensive line is going to be a lot better this year. That's going to make a big difference itself. And if you give Dylan Raiola time, what's he going to be able to do? And like I said, we already said, he don't need to be perfect. He just needs to be average, which I think he well is. So I just said this is Haarberg's team to lose. But yes, I feel like this is Raiola's team to win, and he's probably going to win it. And maybe that's basically what I should have said. This is this is Raiola's team to win, because right now, to me, Harburg is the starter. He's improving. He did just as well to me in the spring game. If we didn't have Dylan Raiola, everybody would have been bragging about how well Heinrich Haarberg did in that spring game. If there was no Dylan Raiola and he would have still went where he went, and it would just been, you would have just seen Heinrich Haarberg and Daniel Kaelin, we would have been talking about how well Haarberg looked compared to last year. But because we have Raiola, and we're all looking forward to that, wanting to see that, the talk, that's kind of what he got overlooked. But don't underestimate him. That's all I'm saying. And he will play. And I think at one time, no doubt, Haarberg's going to play, Raiola's going to play. Question is, will Daniel Kaelin play? And I think he'll probably play in three or four games. But he'll probably be the one that will redshirt unless we do have an injury with one of them quarterbacks, and then no, he won't redshirt. So, but that's probably the one that will. Now, I want to go over which Huskers after the spring camp maybe boosted their stock, maybe boosted their, our expectations of how they are and how they will be, and it's going to maybe play a big role come this year. And the first one is, to me, is Jeremiah Charles, defensive back out of Texas. And the reason I say that is because, the only starting corner we have is Tommy Hill. So the other one's up in the air, and it looked like it was going to be Bly Hill until he got hurt in that spring game, suffered that key injury. And so that boosted right there alone Jeremiah's stock excessively. And so if he could come into the fall camp and shine and ball out, this is his job to win. I do know they said Bly Hill should make it back before the beginning of the season, but if he misses fall camp, and I know how Rule is, he doesn't want to rush anyone back. He might be able to be back, and you might hear Rule going, we're going to give him another week, and he's going to slowly bring him in. He did that even with Buford last year. So Charles could end up being other starting corner, unless we end up getting Mangan there that out of Michigan State in the transfer pool, which I do think Nebraska has a good shot at getting. And if we get him there, I could see him moving to corner and playing corner, or I see him playing that safety position, which is what he is, and Hart's all moving back to corner. So, but we'll keep an eye on that. The next one I feel like made a big impact is John Bullock. He's the inside linebacker. He's a senior this year. Bullock started out as a defensive back, and then last year shined as a linebacker when the staff thought he could make a big impact and moved over to linebacker. And then Bullock played in 10 games last season, and he counted for 50 tackles. And so he decided to come back in his sixth year to not only help this team win, but to boost his stock for the NFL draft, because it didn't seem like anyone out of Nebraska was going to get drafted this year. And so I think it was a smart move by any of them that came back that sixth year, because I guarantee you next year they're probably getting drafted. And so I think he also didn't want to leave on that sour taste of how last year went. I think he knew. He was here. He's seen some of them seasons we had where we had the close loss and all that. But there's a big difference in last year and them, besides the records being the same and losing close games. He probably saw the writing on the wall and said, hey, Rule and this staff is making progress. There's going to be a big difference come 2024. And he wanted to be part of that. On top of that, helping himself out, because that gives him another year as linebacker before he goes to the NFL. And this is a big move for the Black Shirts, because as you know, inside linebacker is still a need and a work in progress for the rest of the team. And so to have that solid player like Bullock coming back, it's going to be a big difference and a big impact on this defense. And I think you're going to see that as the year goes on. The next one that, to me, boosted his stock during the spring was Riley Van Poppel. Plays on the defensive line. He's a sophomore. He's a 4-star player. He's out of Texas. And he's going to have a big opportunity this year in 2024 to make a big impact as he rotates in with Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher. And this is going to be a big one. His play is going to be a big difference on how this defense and this front four plays, because he might be the biggest difference when it comes to the dominance of this front four, because with him out there plugging that hole and all that, giving Robinson and Hutmacher rest to stay fresh as the game goes on and the game play out, and then in that fourth quarter you got a fresh Robinson and Hutmacher trying to shut down the other opponent's offense and secure a win. So I think this is a big one right here. This way, you know, like I said, this way Robinson and Hutmacher stay fresh through the whole season, and as the season goes on, and lets us pull out some of them fourth quarter games where in the past we were losing the last 3 or 4 years. So I think it's time to end the trend of what's been happening to Nebraska, especially in late in games and losing by 1 score or less. So Van Poppel's boosted his stock big time, and he boosted on some weight. He boosted up to 290 pounds over the winter, which gives him much needed bulk to help fill that holes on that defensive line there in the middle. So watch for that one there, because I think that one's going to be a big one. Now let's talk some recruiting news. And this is including 5-star wide receiver Michael Terry, right down here at San Antonio, Texas, not too far where I'm at. He's 6'3", 210 pounds, and Terry was blown away with it by his visit with Nebraska, and especially the fan support and how everyone treated him there like no other place. And it made him feel at home. Everybody knew who he was. The whole state stepped up, and he was just totally impressed through that whole trip. And right now, Texas has the inside track on Terry as we speak. Right now, he's been predicted to still commit to Texas. A lot of the big sites have him predicted to go to Texas. But hold on, I'm telling you right now, the Huskers are in a much more favorable spot than everyone thinks. And the way Raiola looked during the spring game, Terry just might be a Husker by the time signing day comes around. Now, he does still plan to visit Oregon and Texas A&M, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him commit to Nebraska and do it before his senior season begins in August, September. Right now, it's a close call. Right now, I'd say it's a slight edge to Texas, but I'd say, you know, Texas, Nebraska maybe be a 50-50 toss-up on which way he goes. But I just got this gut feeling he probably ends up going to Texas. And then the only reason I say that is Austin is just a stone throws away from San Antonio, where his family and all them can make them games so easily every weekend. And that's a big thing. So that's just going to be hard to pull him away because of that. If he lived anywhere else besides San Antonio or in the Austin area, I would say then Nebraska probably would be able to get him. And that doesn't mean Nebraska doesn't. He might just turn around and say, you know what, I'm here to go play with Dylan Raiola and look good and go as high in the draft as I can in 3 years or 4 years, whatever it is, before he leaves. But I don't know. Family means a lot to a lot of these kids. And I just don't know if it's enough to pull them from Texas. But right now, it's a very close race. So, but don't count him out. The next one is 4-star quarterback TJ Lateef out of California, about 6'2", 6'1.5", something like that, about 185, 190 pounds. Another one that had a great spring, and to me, he's about to commit. He probably will commit. If I had to give a crystal ball, he's committing to Nebraska. The question is, when will he commit to Nebraska? I think he'll commit probably within the next month or so. I think he'll do it soon. Most quarterbacks try to commit early, get it out of the way, and that also helps with other recruitings. And this could even spark Michael Terry from committing too, because not only he has Raiola, then he has TJ Lateef that he knows here. And you got to remember, We also have Daniel Kalen. Nebraska has two elite 11 quarterbacks, and TJ Lateef could be the next one. And so how would it look that a program has three elite 11 quarterbacks on their roster? I don't know if that's even been heard of. Probably has. Probably been Georgia or Alabama, somebody like that. It probably did. But if you had to go back last year, I think if Dylan Raiola didn't commit like he did to Georgia, where Daniel Kalen flipped back to Nebraska, because he always really wanted to go to Nebraska. He was a Nebraska kid and really wanted to do that. But if Dylan didn't do what he did last year, Daniel would have stayed committed to Missouri and wouldn't be here. But because what Dylan did and went all the way to December, and Daniel by then had already went all in recruiting and all that, and I think he even then goes, well, I can't leave now after I've been telling these other players, come, let's do this together. And I think in his heart he wants to be at Nebraska. And because of that, Nebraska ended up with two elite 11 quarterbacks. So who else can say that, right? The next one is four-star linebacker Christian Jones. He's out of Omaha. He's 6'3", just under 6'3", 215 pounds. He had another big visit, raved about the trip here to Lincoln, and he seems well on board with what Tony White and Rhule are doing here. He's another player I expect to commit to Nebraska and probably here soon. Question is probably when. He could play it out, take other visits, but I don't see him going anywhere else. The question now to me is, when will he make his decision, as he's not really given any hints on when he'll make it official. But if I had to guess right now, he's coming to Nebraska, and if I had to guess when he was going to do it, he'd probably do it sometime in June. I'd say probably June. He might go into July. I got a feeling before his senior year, he'll probably go ahead and commit, and I see him being a Husker. The next one is another linebacker, four-star linebacker Dawson Merritt out of Overland, Kansas. He's 6'3", 205 pounds. Again, another one at the spring game weekend that he was blown away by the support and the friendliness of not just the team and the staff, but the whole state. Raved how well it went. Right now, I'd say Alabama's in control for Merritt because he ended up going to Bama, and I would say have a slight edge, but the Huskers made a big impact on him during his visit, and he feels a real connection with Rhule and this whole coaching staff. Merritt has actually said that Nebraska and Alabama are neck and neck for his decision, and I feel this might come down to NIL and who makes the better offer, who makes the best offer. And the question you got to ask yourself, the Huskers do have the money to spend, but the question is, does Rhule and NIL really want to start playing a bidding war on these top players? Merritt is one I could see committing to the Tide and within a year or two transfer to Nebraska. But don't be surprised if he just straight up commits to the Huskers as well. We'll just have to keep an eye on this as it goes along. Now, I want to throw a sleeper commit in here that no one's really talked about much. He's not visited. He's going to be coming here and visiting here in a couple weeks. I think in June sometime. June 7th, I believe it was. June 7th weekend, I think he's coming. Is another wide receiver, Corey Sims out of St. Louis, Missouri. 6'3", another big receiver. He's 180 pounds. He's not as thick as Michael Terry is, but a great player in himself. He's got over 35 offers. Most sites have him predicted to go to Missouri, probably because he is in Missouri. Most of them have him committing at Missouri, but I say look out. He's my sleeper for the Huskers. As Sims has said, as he comes here in June to visit, and remember, if y'all remember him, his dad played basketball here in Lincoln, so he does have he has some ties here to Nebraska. I just have this gut feeling. There's nothing I've seen or nothing I've heard, just this gut feeling that Rhule and this state, this fan, this group, everyone there is going to woo him when he gets here, woo him enough, and his family, that he'll end up committing to the Huskers by signing day. You watch. I guarantee you this. I can't guarantee it, I guess. So you watch this one. This is my sleeper. I think we'll end up getting Sims to sign with the Huskers. So again, guys, thank you for watching.